Hello, everyone, and welcome to Magic in Media, the podcast brought to you by the Vibe Collective and me, Carly D., a reader and manager here at the Vibe Collective. This podcast combines magic with the current pop culture news and moments to show you that magic is all around us every day. We just have to look around and find it. So we find the metaphysical and magic in the world all around us and share it with you. Welcome to Magic in Media. We have some really fun topics to cover this week. We're going to touch on a story that I did last year in 2025, and how we're still seeing those predictions really come to fruition. We're going to talk more about the Olympics and how we can connect to them and the energy and power around us. I think the Olympics this week, today's the 5th, the opening ceremonies start tomorrow, February 6th. And I think in media right now, Olympics are huge. We are seeing the big lead up to the opening ceremonies tomorrow and ultimately the games. So I feel it's very timely to tie our Magic in Media podcast into the Olympics that are going to be taking up a lot of screen time and media time these next couple weeks. And then we will end by discussing the mid part of winter that we are in right now, kind of what's popular about it, something called Groundhog Day, and then a lesser known pagan holiday that is very similar to it. So we are going to discuss where we're seeing magic show up in media and ultimately our lives. And of course, we will talk about in our Olympic segment what you can do this week to connect to the magic around you. So let's get started. Our first topic takes us not only back to a story that I covered last year in 2025, but takes us to New York City, quite literally. Topic 1 is about Whitney Leavitt from Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and Dancing with the Stars fame, and the Leo full moon on Sunday showing up right as she is making her Broadway debut, which we predicted on this podcast that she would ultimately kind of outgrow. I did a story. You can find the podcast from the fall of last year around the time of the Scorpio. I think it was a Scorpio new moon. There was lots of shedding, change. And in that I noted, that Whitney is leveling up. She's kind of outgrowing her reality TV origins, like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And I wouldn't be surprised if she got more acting gigs in Broadway. Ultimately, the Broadway was announced. We did a podcast covering that. So already that prediction came true. But why I think this is so cool is because she had her opening night basically on the Leo full moon. So we talked about the Leo full moon last week, and my apologies. I kept saying it was on Saturday. It was on Sunday. That was totally just like a brain fart on my end. But we had the Leo full moon on Sunday. So she debuted on Monday. So literally her Broadway debut lined up with the Leo full moon. And Leo, like we talked about, is all about being on display, being seen, our presence, how we're being perceived, our appearance. And she quite literally had her first appearance on Broadway. Huge Leo moment, huge Leo energy. But it was really cool to kind of talk about how that Scorpio moon was affecting her and her change from Dancing with the Stars. And like I said, this is just very fitting that on a Leo full moon, she literally makes a public debut on Broadway. Like, I can't think of many more Leo things than that. So that is very cool. But yeah, we watched her progression. If you follow her story or you followed her journey on Dancing with the Stars, it wasn't always the easiest for her. She had a lot of internet backlash and things come from Dancing with the Stars, which is why I feel a lot of that Scorpio new moon connected to her, which is a lot of releasing and, we're leaving the year of the snake and going into the year of the horse. She was really like shedding that last like little bit before going into this new chapter. And now while she is on her Broadway run, we will make the switch in the Chinese zodiac from the year of the snake to the year of the horse, which really signifies, that she is on that horse track of moving forward momentum. So part of what I love doing in this podcast is showing how stories and media like affect with astrology, so we can really see on a bigger scale what it looks like, and then kind of mirror it back of like, well, what does that show me in my own life, and stuff like that. But I do think it was really cool to see Whitney have this progression, and even the progression of the stories on this podcast that we followed, to now see her debuting on a Leo full moon. So just so cool. I really loved covering her story astrologically as she's gone through this stuff. And on a personal note, I am going to New York City next week, and I was lucky enough to get a ticket to see Whitney on Broadway. So I will be seeing her in New York City on Broadway. She's performing the role of Roxy Hart in Chicago. Again, this was all stuff we predicted on this podcast in the fall. So I was really excited when I was able to get tickets to see her Broadway debut. So that is really cool, really exciting to just kind of, again, revisit the way we see astrology affect celebrities and people in media on a grander scale. And then once we see that, we can kind of see how it applies to our own life. I think this is also a really good way to start learning astrology birth charts, if that's something that interests you. I've really started looking at a lot of my favorite celebrities or different celebrity birth charts to see like what those traits look like in someone who is like very well known, and how it can translate then in other people's readings. So I've always kind of had an interest in taking the magic in media and putting it together. So yeah, celebrity birth charts can be a very fun way to learn about birth charts and some of your favorite celebrities. So check it out if that is something that interests you. But again, congratulations to Whitney. Check out those old podcast episodes if you want to hear the breakdown more of where we were at astrologically in the fall, when she was on Dancing with the Stars, and when the most recent season of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives came out, and where she is now. So really cool kind of astrology breakdown there. Now, for our second topic, we are going back to the Olympics. So the Olympics, like we said, start really tomorrow. The opening ceremonies are February 6th. They are going to be in Milan. So people are already there. The Olympians are already getting settled in. We talked a lot last week about symbolism and the common symbolism that we see in the Olympics. But today, I really honestly have had crystals on my mind all week. I've just really been thinking about crystals. And when I was thinking of how I still wanted to cover the Olympics this week, I decided to go through some really good crystals to use for something like the Olympics. Or if I was telling an Olympian what crystals to bring with them for best energy, protection for the Olympic Games, this is what I would suggest. So we are going to go through some crystals, their properties, how they would be helpful for someone in the Olympics. And then in turn, I hope that it can help you find something in there that affects or resonates with you. And maybe there's a crystal in this list that not only can help an Olympian, but can also help you. So what you can do this week is really hear me out on these crystal explanations, why you should use them, why they'd be good for certain things, and see if any of these crystals could be a good thing to bring into your life, into your goal setting, or anything like that. So yeah, we are going to go through the crystals that I would suggest for the Olympics. There are quite a few. Again, they all kind of cover different things. I like to bring like bundles of crystals for stuff. So even if there's multiple that resonate with you or that, kind of stand out to you, that definitely makes sense. You can make like bundles of crystals too. But let's start to break them down. In just a second, let me grab a drink of water real quick. So our first Olympic crystal suggestion is clear quartz. And we talked about clear quartz like 2 weeks ago, that it is an amplifier of energy. It's the master healer, and it's really good for just overall taking the energy around you and putting a focus or intention on it. So, of course, I would recommend that for an Olympian. I would get like one specific clear quartz and just like meditate with it and use it as this intention to bring me focus in the games, right? And overall, like amplifying the other crystals that you'd pair with it, because like we said, clear quartz is good for focusing your intention, focusing your energy, but it is also an amplifier of energy, and it'll amplify the energy of the other crystals around you. So even more, if there's another crystal on this list that you're like, wow, those healing properties sound amazing, that really like speaks to me, get a clear quartz to put with it, and that will just amplify the energy of that crystal. So clear quartz is an amplifier. It focuses intention and energy. It is a really good collective stone too. So the collective energy of like power and focus, I feel, is very in line with the Olympics and clear quartz. So again, it is good for kind of absorbing collective energy like that. But we want to also, crystal cleansing and stuff is a whole other thing. But again, good for the overall collective, which there are a lot of people sharing a common goal in the Olympics. So I feel like in clear quartz, it's kind of nice to have a collective energy in a situation like that. And because there is a lot of pressure at the Olympics, I think that crystals can be a good kind of talisman to remind you of your goal, to kind of bring clarity in those crazy moments. So clear quartz is our first one. The next one I chose is carnelian. So carnelian is a crystal, it's an agate, but it has vitality, energy, fire, passion, courage. They say if you're going to a job interview to carry carnelian, so think like having that kind of confidence almost even, as well as courage. It is red, orangish in color. Usually it can contain, lines of like gray, white, yellow as well. But overall, it really is like a reddish orange stone or crystal. So it does tie into like blood, passion, energy, heat. It has a lot of fiery energy. Carnelian does. So when we're thinking of, the physical drive that comes with the Olympics, the blood pumping through your body, carnelian has a lot of that energy. And again, we're talking vitality, we're talking fire, passion, with carnelian. So it has been a stone that ancient athletes have favored for many years. And again, just that level of confidence and courage that carnelian brings would be really good for the Olympics, because there is a little bit of that, like, you like fake it till you make it. Like, even if you don't feel like you're the best, carrying yourself with confidence will help you. So carnelian is definitely one that I would recommend. And again, if you need extra energy, like passion, I recommend carnelian. I used to always say too, don't keep carnelian around you in places where you sleep or want to meditate, because it is a very energizing stone. So again, that physical drive and physical energy, there's that blood element that connects to carnelian, all very like athletic. So if anything, I would say carnelian is really good for the athleticism and like the fire vitality of the Olympics. Next, we have a crowd favorite, Tiger's Eye. I always say the song Eye of the Tiger is the essence of that stone. Focus, drive, determination. You put your eye on the prize and you keep going for it. So it's that steadiness, but it's like a steady confidence, right? Steady confidence that I'm going to reach that goal. I have my eye on the prize. It helps with any like fear or doubt. So if you are having doubts about yourself, you're worried, Tiger's Eye can help, again, strengthen your energy almost. I would say like strengthen your mind is how I feel a lot of the time with Tiger's Eye. It's more of like a mental clarity stone, whereas we're saying carnelian is more for like the physical. So Tiger's Eye is definitely more steadying, like we said, that steady confidence, that eye on the prize, but still like just more focus. I think of energy and like energy pushing you forward with the carnelian, and then taking Tiger's Eye to help like balance your adrenaline so you can focus it on that goal, like we said, and keeping that eye on the prize. That is literally the essence of that stone. I often recommend Tiger's Eye for people in career stuff and any kind of goal setting, because it has that energy of slow and steady wins the race almost, as long as we're being consistent and not kind of like too crazy, then we can keep the balance to keep moving forward. But I love tiger's eye. It does come in a variety of colors too. Brown is the most common and is my favorite, but there is also blue and red tiger's eye. Blue, I would use even more for like school focused or like mental focused stuff, whereas red tiger eye, I would use more for physical energy, physical goals. With that kind of energy, it carries more of that fire, tiger's eye energy. But basic tiger's eye or traditional tiger's eye will be more like brown in color. And again, perfect stone for focusing and goals. Now, another aspect of the Olympics is protection. There's lots of people around. Anytime you're somewhere where there's lots of people, there's tons of energy at something like the Olympics, it can be really good to protect yourself. So I'm going to go through my like top protection crystals. There's lots, but we're going to talk about kind of like the well-knowns. My first one is black tourmaline, and black tourmaline, I really see it as like a protecting of your space. So it is good for absorbing any energy that is like negative, that can not just be negative energy, but think anxiety, jealousy, overwhelm, chaos. There is lots of that at the Olympics as well. So black tourmaline really, to me, I use it as a like protecting my space. Whereas black obsidian is again really good for protection of those things, you know, protecting you from negative energy, anxieties, jealousies. But I use obsidian for more wearing on myself or protecting my own energy, where I think of black tourmaline as like a force field, like a physical force field almost. So I do use that more in like home or office building settings, if that makes sense. Whereas an obsidian is a little bit more of like protecting your energy for me. And those are like the top protection crystals that are very well known are black tourmaline and black obsidian. They're also very grounding. So again, when we are grounded, we feel safe, we feel protected, and we can operate from a healthy place. And these crystals promote that grounding energy. So if I was looking for stones for protection, protecting my energy, and again, not just like the generalness of negative energy, but again, anxiety, overwhelming, crowd, if you're someone who gets nervous in crowds, black tourmaline and black obsidian are very good for really just protecting your energy. And sometimes with those crystals, it's not even like people are intentionally trying to, you know, send or put bad energy on you. I mean, jealousy is that, but sometimes there's just too much energy around you and you need to ground yourself, right? So when we say negative energy, it doesn't even necessarily mean that people are trying to, you know, throw negative energy at you. It's just sometimes other people's energy that they have, we can feel it, especially if you're an empath. So if I was an empath at the Olympics, I would double down on my protection crystals, again, just because the energy there is so intense, right? And we can all acknowledge that and see that, even those of us watching at home, that it is very intense. The energy is very intense. So I think the best thing we can do is, again, protect our energy. And that's not just with crystals. I would also recommend, you know, being very healthy with your mental health and meditation. There's lots of spiritual things that can help you in something like this. So it is very cool to kind of look at it from a magic perspective with these crystals. All right, so we've got a couple more crystals I want to cover. Another really good grounding stone is hematite. I often recommend hematite for people too who have a lot of nervous energy. It's like silver, almost looks like metal. It's an element that really helps to, again, ground you and keep you calm. It keeps you in your body when you are someone who maybe goes in your head a little too much. That's how I think of it a lot of the time. So it can be very useful for athletes who feel like they're being like swept up in, like, maybe you are someone who gets a lot of, you know, mental anxieties. hematite can help ground you, help keep you in your body if you are someone who lives up here a little bit in the mind, I say. So if you let your thoughts run away from you and you just want to be more in your body and in the moment presently, I think that hematite can be very good for that. It's often made into rings or worry stones for this reason of it is very grounding and helping with nervous energy. So if you're someone who has a lot of anxiety, and that does speak to you, look into some hematite because it can, again, really help you with staying grounded and in your body. So a couple more stones I just want to touch on. Overall, we talked about why we would recommend these to the Olympians to kind of help them through the process, right? So lots of protection, lots of grounding and focus, but there's a little bit of luck, right, in the Olympics, or wanting to have that that 4-leaf clover in your pocket. So if you're looking for some crystals to have that gold medal aura, I would recommend pyrite or sunstone because these have very bright gold energy. Pyrite, we've talked about before, is known as fool's gold. It also helps with like prosperity and abundance. So maybe if you want to have a little extra luck around you, bring some pyrite. And sunstone is a very like vibrant, happy vitality stone. It has a lot of radiance to it, which has that gold metal energy too. So it's very positive. And I think that that can be another good stone in general for the Olympics because of its positivity. Sunstone, I say, carries the energy of the sun, right? Which is very uplifting. It's very positive. So I think that those would be some good stones to carry with you for a little extra luck, a little extra gold medal energy, as long as you are, staying grounded and stuff as well. I think that having a little extra luck on your side can be helpful for sure. So those are the crystals that I would recommend. Color that is very common in luck crystals would be green. So green adventuring is another good one for like goals, power, determination, abundance, prosperity. So I would probably work some green adventuring in there too. It is like an opportunity luck kind of stone for me. So again, I would throw it in there, but if you're looking for a little extra luck, I guess I would say I would check out some green adventuring. But yeah, I think we do a good spread on these crystals of, again, focus and intention with our clear quartz and our tiger's eye. We have grounding with hematite and our protection stones, black tourmaline and black obsidian. And of course, we have carnelian for vitality, power, and energy. And then that sunstone and pyrite for a little gold medal energy, right? That positivity, that abundance, that like proud mindset. Those would be our gold medal stones. So I hope that those spoke to you. I hope it got you thinking about your own goals that you want to reach and how these crystals could maybe help you or be good talismans for that. And when I say talismans, it's like when you have crystals around you, like tiger's eye, for example, they are little reminders, physical reminders of the goals that we've set for ourselves. So if you have a goal to meditate every day and you meditate in your car before work, put a piece of tiger's eye in your car. So every time you see it when you're in your car, you'll say, oh my gosh, I need to stick with my goal of meditating before work. My tiger's eye is that physical reminder, that physical talisman of the goal that I'm working on or the energy I want to carry. So yeah, I always think of that too with crystals. Physically carrying them with you brings their energy with you. So those are our little crystal breakdowns for the Olympics. So yeah, I hope that gave you some inspiration. And I'm so excited to watch the Olympics. I'm so excited for the women's figure skating team. They have really cool energy, and lots of like just amazing stuff going on. So I'm really excited. The Olympics are awesome. I think that they carry a great energy. That's just focus, determination. It's really showing you that if you work for something and you commit and you're consistent, like Tiger's Eye says, you can reach your goals. So we'll be covering some more Olympic content, I'm sure, but see what crystals from our list speak to you this week. And now, our third and final topic for today is Groundhog's Day. So, we did have Groundhog's Day this week, and from what I could see, mostly he saw his shadow. We'll continue to have winter. This is a tradition, something we see on TV. We all know about the Groundhog Day. If the groundhog sees his shadow, then we will continue to have winter. If he doesn't, spring will come sooner, whatever. What I want to talk about is how Groundhog Day, which is very popular, well-known holiday in media, I would almost say, is very similar to Imbolc, which is a Celtic kind of pagan festival around spring coming, bright days coming ahead. And I think that it's really interesting that these are very similar energy Imbolc and Groundhog Day. So we are going to talk about how they're similar and obviously why it's relevant right now in the middle of the winter. So like we said, Groundhog's Day, he sees his shadow if he doesn't. We're in the middle of winter. It kind of determines if we're going to have more winter or if spring will come sooner. Imbolc is basically pointing the midpoint of winter, right? It is an ancient Celtic festival that traditionally happens around February 1st or 2nd. So again, right around the time Groundhog Day happens, and marks that midpoint of winter, the slow return of light, and looking forward to spring and brighter days ahead. So Imbolc is that acknowledgement of we are in the middle of winter, much like Groundhog's Day. We want spring to come, but we're not quite there yet. So we need to kind of find the light, find the warmth while we are still in winter. It is often associated Imbolc with Bridget, who is like a saint or a deity that women will often pray to for fertility. She is like known for the flaming heart. So again, heat, hearths, hope. Bridget has a lot of like Irish history as well. But that is what Imbolc is really about. And traditionally, people would watch the weather or guess the weather to decide if winter would stick around or start to let go, which again ties in to Groundhog's Day. Lots of these old Celtic traditions like Imbolc, nature is a big part of it. Again, so that's why we're talking about they would watch the weather. You'd often be outside when doing these kinds of rituals. Lots of the time, people will make Bridget's cross, which is like, it's made out of like stalks of like, from like the farm or like nature, whatever. So again, lots of Imbolc ceremonies would kind of have to do with nature, especially historically. And again, they were exactly the same kind of energy of what Groundhog's Day was about, being in the middle of the winter, looking forward to the warmth ahead while embracing the warmth we currently have. So that is a little bit about Imbolc, but Groundhog Day, February 2nd, it's a North American folk tradition, so very popular here in the US, and the groundhog does predict winter or an early spring based on its shadow. So it sounds goofy, but it comes from a European weather divination custom where they would actually use badgers, hedgehogs, bears, other animals, but with the same idea. So divination, if you aren't familiar with what that means, it is using messages and signs around you to divine a message from your higher power, your guides, your ancestors, whatever that may be for you. So talk about magic in media, right? Like literally the idea of Groundhog's Day, the media frenzy behind it comes from a European weather divination custom, which was, again, they didn't just use groundhogs. It was all different kinds of like animals that would hibernate, i.e. bears and stuff like that. But how like it literally was just... It's a divination. Literally, when you're doing Groundhog Day, we are using a groundhog to divine a message. So Groundhog Day is divination, is magic in media. I love it. This is like so perfect. So there are some shared threads between the two, between Groundhog Day and Imbolc, and that is what we've talked about, but they also both tap into reading the signs of nature, right? Paying attention to the nature around us. Even in these cold winter months, we embrace what we can of the nature, getting outside, appreciating it, finding warmth where we can, and again, divining those messages from nature and really listening to what nature has to say. And they both ask the question, how much winter is left, right? How much is left? We're actually looking for an answer to that question and using different tools to divine or get that message. And they both also have the concept of light versus dark, patience versus hope. So that light versus dark is exactly winter versus spring. Patience is waiting, hope for the warmth and the spring to come sooner, especially in the olden days with Imbolc. They didn't have heat and stuff like we did. So getting to spring was even more important for their survival. So again, both of these tap into that light versus dark, that midpoint of winter, of wanting to, leave the dark days of winter behind and move forward into the light brightness of spring, which we all know is coming. So basically, Imbolc is more of a spiritual, pagan, seasonal, intuition holiday, whereas Groundhog Day is more of a folk tradition and definitely a spectacle. Definitely a spectacle. If you see all the footage from where they do the big Groundhog Day celebration, lots of fanfare, lots to see. So I would say a difference between the two is that, right? They represent so much of the same stuff, but Imbolc is more spiritual. It's less talked about. It's less well known. It is more going inward. It is more looking into intuition and those quiet messages that we get when we are in nature, when we slow down, where Groundhog Day is this big, well-known thing. It's televised, it's talked about, it's very public, it's very social, but both of these carry that similar energy. So very similar message goals almost in Imbolc and Groundhog Day, but very different approaches. Yeah, that's how I would break it down. Different approaches. But ultimately, we are all in that same energy of midwinter right now. It is February. We feel it. We're about to start the Winter Olympics. We are in the thick of winter, but we know that there is hope coming. There is light coming. There is spring coming. And that hope is what has to keep us moving forward. So that is what I have for you this week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and talking about some magic in media. I hope you have a great week. And as always, find the magic in your own life. We'll see you next time.